Okay, we start to sewing this new style Cheongsam dress. This is back and this is front, and as you can see, I decided to do the different fabric and this part and this part. This is sleeve. I cut it in half, and this part we're using the different fabric such as lace. I inspired by the Cheongsam dress of Song Meiling, so I decided doing the similar one. And this is small jean, and this is the upper side of the small jean. Okay, using the different fabric. This is Chinese collar, and this is the facing of the front jean. There are all patterns here. Now we cut the fabric. 好，我们现在来看这些纸样，我已经剪裁好了。这个款式的旗袍我们会用一个比较独特的方式来进行装饰，就是它的同一个裁片的一个部分呢，就是这个前襟。 然后后片和小襟，它靠近领口的这一圈呢，我们都会用不同的面料来裁剪一个有点类似于云肩的这么一个形状，一个圈出来。然后包括绣片，的这个绣片的底部也是会采取这下面这个部分也是会采取用那个不同的面料。那我现在倾向于是用蕾丝。宋氏三姐妹的特展上看到过，宋美龄有一件她最喜欢的这种旗袍，就是这样做的。它的袖口，然后领口一圈，采取的都是，它当然它用的不是蕾丝，它用的是边绳。 那其实效果和蕾丝是很类似的。那如果你能够自己有这个信心去编这个绳结，或者是你也可以你可以尝试一下。然后的话，用蕾丝其实也是一个很好的选择。那好，我们现在就开始来制作这个旗袍了。它其实是总的来说，它的样式是比较简单的、常见的样式。它的特点其实主要就是在那一圈蕾丝上面呢。然后它是属于中长款的。以前我们走的很多都是长款的。好，首先我们把面料正面向上，然后剪裁前片。前片的纸样也是正面向上，然后沿着这个外圈缝缝剪裁一片。因为我这个只是教学用，所以说我只是简单的进行收边。那如果你要用滚边的方式的话，那么你可能就需要沿着这个里面的缝缝剪下来的是净样，要把缝缝去掉啊，大家记住这一点就行了。So we put the fabric right side up and put the front piece onto the fabric and cut the outer line. Cut itself. 我现在剪裁后下片，布料反面相对折叠，然后将这个后片后中线与折线对齐，沿外圈剪裁一圈。Okay, we fold the fabric round side facing round side. And put the back pattern onto it, and align the central back to the folder line, and cut the outer line of the pattern, so we get one piece of the back. 现在剪裁小襟，小襟就是布料正面向上，然后小襟的纸样正面向上，沿外圈剪裁一圈。 该打剪口的打剪口啊。Now we cut the small jean and put the fabric right side up and put the pattern right side up onto it and cut the outer line. Remember, mark the notch. 现在我们剪裁绣片，绣片的上半部分， 袖片上半部分呢，剪裁一对折叠布料，放上折叠布料，那个正面朝外或者反面朝外都可以。总之你剪裁的是一对，放上纸样，然后眼外圈剪裁一对下来。Now we fold the fabric wrong side facing wrong side and put the upside of the sleeve pattern and cut the outer line so we get one pair of the upside of the sleeve. 现在我们剪裁这个大襟的贴面，布料的反面向上，然后纸样正面向上，眼外圈剪裁一片下来。Now we cut the facing of the front jean and put the fabric wrong side up and put the pattern right side up to it and cut the outer line so we get one piece of the facing of the front jean. 现在我们剪裁的是那个领片，领片我们对折布料，反面相对是外。布料的正面朝外，然后眼外圈剪裁得到一对这个领片。We put the fabric wrong side facing wrong side and put the collar pattern onto it and cut the outer line. We get one pair of the collars pattern. I choose to use this lace to cut the decoration fabric. This is the downside of the sleeve. Okay, we fold this. Put the downside of the pattern onto it and cut the outer line. Then we get one pair of the downside sleeve. 我用这个白色的蕾丝来做，做这个装饰性的镶边部分，那么这个就是布料对折，蕾丝对折，然后把袖片底部袖片放上去，眼外圈剪裁，那得到一对这个底部袖片。看现在蕾丝的正面向上，放上这个是小襟的上部，这个是大襟的上部，这个是后片的上部，后片上部先不说，小襟的上部和大襟的上部，各剪裁一片。This is a small jeans upper side. This is a front jeans upper side. We put them onto the right side of the lace and cut the outer line of the pattern. Get one piece of the lace of each. 后片的这个上部蕾丝，就是折叠。然后这是后中线，后中线与折线对齐，然后沿外圈剪裁，那得到一片这个那个后片的上部装饰相调。We fold the fabric right side facing right side, and put the pattern, the back upper pattern, to the fabric, align the central back to the folder line, and cut the outside. Then we get one piece of the upper side of the back. 好，布料已经裁剪出来了。那么我先把这个后片的省缝、腰省和袖笼省，然后还有前大襟的腰省和胸省、腋下省，都已经先急缝好，按照之前打的标记急缝好。So all the fabric has been cut out, and this is the front jean, and I sew the waist dart and the armhole dart, and this is the back, and I sewed the waist dart and the armhole dart. Now we should complete all the parts of the fabric. This is the back part. So here is a lace, and here. So we put them right side facing right side, and stitch them together around this line. This is the front jean, and put the missing part of the lace here. Okay, and we put them right side facing right side, sewing along this line. Okay, and this is sleeve. So we sew also we put them right side facing right side, and sewing them together along with my fingers point. Okay, and here is a small jean. We also have a lace part on it. Okay, here. Now we also here is a small jean, and sewing them together, right side facing right side. Okay. 好了，我们把蕾丝和它的原部件缝合在一起了。大家可以看一下，这是绣片，这是小襟，然后这个是前襟贴面。如果我现在是做了把跟那个大襟缝合的部分、重合的部分也是做了这个拼接的。那这个还是要看你自己要做什么样的工艺。你如果是做包边的话嘛，那你其实可以不用这个贴边的。如果你要做镶边啊什么的话，那你可能还是要像我这样在根据我的纸样，然后把贴边要分成2部分，也是要进行这个蕾丝的重叠的。然后这是大襟前襟的部分，这是后片。OK， 后片的部分。So we sew the lace to the main part of the fabric. Let's have a look at it. Okay, this is back. This is front jean. This is front jean. This is small jean. This is front facing. And this is sleeve. Okay. Don't forget making the darts before you sewing them together. So now we're sewing them together. OK， 现在我们来把它们缝在一起首先我们要做的是把这个前襟的贴面和前襟缝合起来，和大襟缝合起来。那它是反面前襟贴面的反面向上，然后重合到根据它的重合起来，根据它的剪口。首先一个是在中间打了个剪口，然后还有前中线一个剪口，然后沿外圈缝纫1圈。直口是缝到这个前中线的剪口这里，这边要稍微留出来。Okay, first we stitch the front facing to the front jean, and put the facing wrong side up to the front jean, and front jean is right side up, and make the notch align together. And start sewing from the central front. Okay, along with this line here, from the central front notch to the side seam. 好，我们前襟贴边上好了，然后把它翻折到里面，并且熨烫平整。Okay, we sewing the front facing to the front jean and flip it over and press it down nicely. Okay, now we making the slits. According to the pattern's notch, we press the slits down so that we can sew it in advance. This is front and this is back. I've already pressed it down. This is the front smudging, and I'll press the seam down and sew it in advance. 就是我们现在做开叉，做开叉呢，在把各个部件缝合在一起之前，需要先做开叉。开叉根据我的那个纸样呢，那么从开叉的这个起点开始，然后把它按缝缝和开叉多余留出来的这个握边，把它给压进去，然后用熨斗把它熨出痕迹来，方便我们缝纫。那不管你用手针还是用缝纫机，就是一定要保证这个平整的。就是在缝纫部件之前，我们先把前片、后片，还有这个小筋的边缘部分都进行，先要把这个开叉做出来，把小筋的缝缝先缝好。好，这个侧缝我们已经做好了，可以看一下啊。We finished to press and sewing the slits and hem. Now we sew the smudging onto the back. Okay, here is the back. Put it right side up, and put the smudging wrong side up. Align the shoulder line together, and sew this shoulder line. And we put the front jean wrong side up onto the back too, and align the shoulder line together and sew it up. OK， 我们现在来做缝制，将装里筋装上去，还有装里筋和大筋，那就是背面的。后片的正面向上，然后放上小筋、里筋，反面向上，前筋、大筋反面向上，对齐肩缝，把肩缝缝合在一起。好，肩缝上好了，我们可以看一下。OK， 这是反面的状况，然后我们就是缝合侧缝。侧缝的话，就是这边是小筋的，这边是右边。那么从这个小筋的底部开始往上，一直缝合到袖笼口。好，这边也是左边，那么也是从左边的话，就是从这个开叉的底部、开叉处一直缝合到袖笼口。Okay, we have sewing the shoulder line together. Now we stitch the side seam together. First we sewing the smudging side, which is the right side, and from the bottom of the smudging, and sewing along with my fingers direction to the underarm, and then we sewing the front jeans side seam from the slits open here, and along with my fingers direction to the armholes point here. OK， 好，我们已经把小筋的侧缝缝好，然后把大筋的左边已经和后身缝合在一起了。现在缝合剩余的侧缝，首先是在小筋的这个底点和它这右边的这个开叉的之间的这一部分需要和大筋缝合在一起，大筋的侧缝缝合在一起。那我们先把这边先缝缝熨倒一下，然后呢，这半边呢，这半边我们也要从这个大筋也要从这个开叉开始，一直到这个大筋贴面的头，大筋贴面的头这边把侧缝。把这个缝缝熨烫倒了之后，特别侧缝这边要就是贴面这边注意，向内熨烫了之后，再把它折进去，再熨一下，然后，从这个地方，从这个贴边的顶点开始，一直到这个 对应的这个小襟的底边的这个位置。那么在这边的话，它是进行你可以包边，你也可以就是平整的把它缝合进去就可以了。然后剩下的这一段是和这一段要缝合，这两边大襟的这边和那边缝合。Okay, after we sewing the small jean to the back and the front jean to the back, and we left one part of the side seam to sew, that is under the small jean, and to the slits notch and this part. Okay, we press the seam down first, then we align the notch together and sewing this part together, and the front jean, this part of the front jean, we just finish the seam by plain stitch or binding tape, any way you want. Okay, here is the right side of the side seam. Take a look at it. Okay. Now we're making the sleeves and the corner. 现在我们制作这个袖子和立领。我们已经做过很多次了。这个就是把袖子缝合起来之后，再上到这个袖笼上面。这个立领也是，缝合3边。好，然后这个再翻折过来上到这个领子上面去。我就不详细展开了。We've made the sleeves and the collar so many times. It's just to sew them together and stitch them onto the armhole, and this stand collar is also sewing this line and flip it over and stitch them onto the neckline.